Have you ever been completely erased from your own life while you were still breathing? Just muted, deleted from the family group chat of existence? Because right now, in my house, I am a ghost. My dad has ignored me, and I mean completely, utterly looked straight through my skull as if I am made of glass for almost a week. 7 days of suffocating, heavy silence. 7 days of him sitting at the head of the dining table, laughing loudly at my brother's jokes, asking my mom about the minute details of her day at work, and letting his eyes slide past me like I'm a damp stain on the wallpaper. It's a very specific kind of psychological warfare, the kind where no voices are raised, no doors are slammed, but you are systematically starved of acknowledgement. And the craziest part, the absolute most maddening part of this whole silent treatment, I'm sitting here, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in the dark at 3 a.m., actually wondering if I'm the villain in this story. The silence is so absolute that it creates a vacuum, and my own mind is filling it with doubt. I'm wondering if it's my fault. Let me tell you exactly how I became invisible. I need to get it out of my head and into the air. And you can tell me if I'm crazy, because it all started with a day that is universally supposed to be about the exact opposite of being invisible, my 17th birthday. To really understand the magnitude of what happened a few days ago, you need a little context about how birthdays operate in the ecosystem of my family. In my house, birthdays are not just days, they are full-scale productions. At least they are if your name isn't mine. I've sat quietly and watched my older brother turn 16 and get treated to a massive, extravagant dinner at a five-star hotel downtown. I'm talking the kind of place with velvet ropes, valet parking, waiters in crisp vests pouring sparkling cider, and a custom-ordered fondant cake that easily cost more than our monthly grocery budget. I've watched my younger sister get private, rented rooms at fancy restaurants, adorned with towering balloon arches, professional photographers, and cascading chocolate fountains. They get heartfelt speeches from the head of the table. They get crystal glasses raised in their honor. And me, I don't get the hotel, I don't get the reservation at the restaurant. Sure, I celebrate my birthday, but it's always a distinct afterthought. It's a rushed, standard-issue plastic box grocery store cake slapped on the kitchen counter right after a normal Tuesday dinner. We eat off paper plates. There's a quick, out-of-tune chorus of happy birthday while at least one person is already scrolling on their phone. It's small, it's quiet, it's over in 10 minutes. Sometimes I lock myself in the bathroom afterward, turn on the shower so no one can hear, and I cry about it. I sit on the freezing cold tiles, hugging my knees to my chest, wondering why I don't warrant a balloon arch. Why I don't warrant a toast or a speech or even a decent camera flash. And immediately, the guilt sets in like a reflex. I tell myself I'm being ridiculous, that I'm overreacting. At least you got a cake, the voice in my head says. Don't be a brat, but the sharp sting never really goes away. It's never actually been about the cake or the balloons, it's about the effort. It's about someone looking at you on the day you were born and saying, "You matter enough for me to try." So a few days ago, I woke up. I was officially 17, the precipice of adulthood, the dancing queen year, the age where you're supposed to feel like the main character of a coming-of-age movie. I opened my eyes to the morning light, and despite years of evidence teaching me otherwise, there was this tiny, foolish, stubborn flutter of hope in my chest. You know that feeling. When your logic tells you one thing, but your heart thinks maybe this year will be different. Maybe 17 is the magic number where they finally see me. I got out of bed with actual energy. I brushed my teeth, spent extra time on my hair, and put on a new outfit I had saved specifically for today. I walked downstairs, actively preparing my face for a bright, surprised smile. I was preparing to be greeted, maybe even hugged. But as my foot hit the bottom step, the atmosphere hit me. There was nothing, absolute crickets. My mom was leaning against the counter, absently drinking her coffee and staring out the window. My dad was hunched over, aggressively scrolling through something on his tablet. My siblings were bickering over who had used all the hot water that morning. I walked straight into the middle of the kitchen, stood there for a long, agonizing second, and nothing, not a single head turned, no happy birthday, no morning birthday girl. They all just acted like it was a random, unremarkable Tuesday in November. I forced myself to walk to the cabinet and poured a glass of water, my hands visibly shaking. I swallowed the lump in my throat and waited all day. Through a silent breakfast, through a lonely lunch at school, through the long afternoon. I kept anxiously checking the time on the clock, rationalizing it. They're playing it cool. They're planning a surprise for when Dad gets off work. But as the sun started to set and the shadows in the house grew long, the cold reality sank into my bones. They forgot, or worse and much more likely. They didn't forget, they just simply didn't care enough to use the breath it takes to say the words. It's not that deep, right? I know, there are global crises, there are real tragedies in the world. But is it really too much to ask the people who raised you for a happy birthday? Just 3 simple words to acknowledge that you exist. Let's shift the spotlight to my older brother for a second, the golden boy, the undisputed prince of the household. Everything he touches, no matter how disastrous, eventually turns to applause in my parents' eyes. He is the impossible standard I am constantly, exhaustingly failing to meet, even when I am doing exactly what I am supposed to do. When he wants something, a new game console, car repairs, a ski trip, it immediately becomes a top-tier family priority. Meetings are held, funds are allocated. When I want something, even something necessary, it instantly transforms into a stern lecture about patience, the value of a dollar, and understanding our current budget constraints. I am not asking to live his life. I don't need his crown, I just want a microscopic fraction of the consideration he breathes in every day. It is profoundly exhausting living in the permanent shadow of someone who gets handed the sun on a silver platter. You see, my brother is incredibly clumsy, he is careless. He breaks expensive things, he loses important things, and there are never any real, lasting consequences. It's always just brushed off with a fond, exasperated sigh. Oh, boys will be boys, they say, or he's just got a lot on his mind, he'll learn. When I make a minor mistake, when I forget a chore or get a B instead of an A, it is treated as a fundamental character flaw, a sign of deep irresponsibility. This glaring double standard is crucial to understand. Keep it firmly in your mind because it is the exact, uneven foundation upon which the rest of this disaster was built. Now let's add another agonizing layer to this perfect storm of a week. My phone. Before all this drama, I had an iPhone 11. My mother bought it for me a long time ago, back when it was relatively new. Notice very carefully how I specifically said my mother bought it. My dad has never, in my 17 years of life, spent his own hard-earned money to buy me a new phone. Never. Well, as all electronics eventually do, the iPhone 11 finally gave out. The motherboard fried, it was totally kaput. And overnight, I was thrust violently back into the dark ages of technology, forced to dig into a drawer and use my ancient, laggy, critically endangered iPhone 6s. Try being a high school senior with an iPhone 6s in today's world. It is a nightmare. It randomly powers off if the wind blows too hard or if the temperature drops below 60 degrees. I can barely open the apps I need for my school portal. I can't participate in mandatory group project chats because my phone physically freezes and crashes every time more than 2 seconds. I was totally isolated. I desperately needed a proper, functioning phone just to survive my daily responsibilities. I had been dropping polite hints. When that didn't work, I flat out swallowed my pride and told him bluntly. I stood in front of him and said, "Dad, I really need a new phone. It doesn't even have to be brand new on top. A refurbished or second-hand one is completely fine. I just need something that actually works and holds a charge." I was being incredibly reasonable. I wasn't demanding the newest Pro Max with a premium finish and a terabyte of storage. I just wanted to be able to coordinate with my lab partner without my device shutting down at 40% battery. Here is the absolute kicker. Here is the exact part that makes my blood boil hot enough to evaporate when his hands there, causing me to be grateful. My dad is not broke. My dad is not struggling to make ends meet. My dad is very comfortably financially stable. If he walked into an Apple store tomorrow and bought me a brand new, top-of-the-line phone in cash, his bank account wouldn't even register a hiccup. But he is incredibly, painfully tight-fisted when it comes to investing in me. And this is a massive, but he is not tight-fisted with everyone. My dad has a history, a very dark, very poorly hidden history of cheating. A history of stepping out on my mom, tearing our family's trust to shreds, and acting like he's the victim of his own choices. And let me tell you, his meticulously guarded wallet suddenly bursts wide open when it comes to entertaining his little girlfriends. I have accidentally seen the receipts on his desk. I have seen the impossibly expensive branded leather bags, the designer heels, the delicate, sparkling jewelry. He can casually drop thousands of dollars in a single weekend on a woman he is hiding in his phone contacts under a fake name like Bob from accounting. But when his own 17-year-old daughter humbly asks for a working piece of technology so she can do her homework, suddenly the sky is falling. Suddenly we are in an economic depression and we have to tighten our belts. Suddenly he's lecturing me about how money doesn't grow on trees. It is infuriating on a cellular level. Because it's not actually about the money, it's about what the flow of that money represents. It represents value. It represents worth. And according to his own bank statements, his side pieces are worth luxury and comfort, and his daughter is worth. Well, you're about to see exactly what I'm worth to him. So let's go back to the evening of my birthday. The birthday that everyone had spent the entire daylight hours aggressively ignoring. It was getting late, past 8 o'clock. I was sitting on the living room sofa, struggling to do an online quiz on my dying iPhone 6s, feeling completely and utterly defeated. I had swallowed the bitter pill and accepted that 17 was going to be a total wash. Then I heard his heavy footsteps. My dad walks into the living room. He stops in front of me and he has this very specific look on his face. It's this slightly smug, expectant, self-satisfied look like a king preparing to bestow a knighthood. And in his hands he is holding a small, rectangular box. My heart did this stupid, pathetic, treacherous little jump in my chest. I hate that it did, I really do, but it did. I thought he remembered. He played it cool all day, he played the long game, but he remembered, and he listened to me. He actually went out and got me a phone. In that microscopic split second, the relief washed over me so strongly I almost cried. I mentally forgave the complete lack of morning birthday wishes. I forgave the cold silence of the entire day. I thought, he is finally stepping up. He is going to show me that I matter, that he sees me. He walked slowly over to the sofa, handed the box down to me, and finally uttered the words, "Happy birthday." I took the box. My hands were actually trembling a little as I pulled the lid off. And sitting inside, resting in the little cardboard groove, was not a new phone. It wasn't even a carefully selected, decent secondhand phone from a certified shop. It was a black iPhone XR. Now, an XR isn't a terrible model inherently, right? People use them all the time, except my stomach dropped as I recognized it immediately. I knew this exact phone. It was my older brother's old phone, the very same one he had recklessly, accidentally dropped on the harsh concrete of the driveway months ago. My dad hadn't gone shopping for me. He had gone digging in my brother's discarded trash drawer. He had paid someone cheap to replace the completely shattered front screen so the phone would turn on and register a touch, but he had completely, purposefully ignored the back. When I picked it up, I felt it before I saw it. The back glass was completely pulverized. It looked like a spiderweb made of ice. It felt incredibly rough and sharp against my bare palm. Tiny, microscopic shards of glass were literally flaking off onto my fingertips just from holding it. This was my grand birthday present for my milestone 17th birthday. The man who buys Prada for strangers took his golden boy's broken, hazardous garbage, did the absolute, insulting bare minimum to make the screen light up, and handed it to me with a smug smile, acting like he was handing me the keys to a brand new Mercedes-Benz. If he wanted to give me this specific hand-me-down phone, which fine, whatever, I said I'd take a used one, he should have at least paid to fix the back. He has the money in his pocket right now. He could have made it look presentable, made it safe to hold without slicing my hand open. But he simply didn't care enough to spend the extra 50 or 60 bucks on me. He slapped a cheap new piece of glass on the front to create an illusion, put it in a box, and called it a day. I sat there holding this dangerous piece of recycled glass. I looked down at the phone, feeling the sharp edges against my skin. Then I looked slowly up at him. I didn't scream. I didn't yell or throw it across the room. I didn't throw a dramatic teenage tantrum. I just felt this massive, freezing cold rock drop straight down into the very pit of my stomach. The realization was suffocating. First, the entire family treats my birthday like it's a chore they forgot to do. Second, the man who effortlessly buys designer bags for his mistresses hands me my brother's broken, shattered leftovers and stands there expecting me to applaud him for his generosity. Of course I was pissed. Anyone with a functioning pulse and an ounce of self-respect would be pissed. I am not being a spoiled, entitled brat. I explicitly told him a second-hand phone was perfectly fine. But there is a massive, gaping canyon of difference between second-hand and literally shattered and falling apart in my hands. So I did the only thing I could physically bring myself to do. My throat was too tight to speak. I reached out and I gently, very deliberately placed the broken iPhone XR down onto the wooden coffee table. The tiny thud of the glass hitting the wood sounded like a gunshot. I didn't say a single word. I didn't force a fake thank you. I didn't say I hated it. I just put it down and removed my hands from it. The silence that rushed into the room was deafening. The air instantly turned thick and suffocating. He could tell immediately that I was upset. My crushing disappointment wasn't just visible. It was practically vibrating off my skin, filling the space between us. That's exactly when his face changed. The smug, self-satisfied Father of the Year expression completely vanished, instantly replaced by dark, defensive indignation. His posture stiffened. How dare I? How absolute dare I not fall to my knees in weeping, joyful gratitude for his majestic, thoughtful gift of broken, recycled glass? He looked down at me, his eyes narrowing, his voice suddenly dripping with thick, heavy condescension, and he said the word that always makes me see red. You should be grateful. He actually told me I should be incredibly grateful that he tried his best to fix the phone for me. Tried his best. Let's dissect that phrase for a second, shall we? Let's look at what that means. Trying his best would be going to a reputable store, putting down a credit card, and buying a refurbished phone in pristine, safe condition. Trying his best would be taking this exact XR to a legitimate repair shop and saying, fix the front screen and the back glass. My daughter deserves a phone that won't cut her hands. Taking a cheap shortcut to save a few bucks on your own kid while sitting on a massive pile of disposable income is not trying your best. It is doing the absolute, calculated minimum required to technically check a box so you can claim you did something. And he had the absolute audacity to stand over me, dressed in his perfectly tailored clothes, smelling like cologne that costs more than my entire wardrobe, and tell me I was ungrateful. The psychological flip was instant. He shifted the blame with the ease of a professional. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, he was no longer the neglectful dad who forgot his daughter's birthday and gifted her literal trash. No, I was suddenly the spoiled, entitled, unappreciative teenager who couldn't recognize a husband. I knew I couldn't stay in that living room for another time. The pressure in my chest was building, and if I opened my mouth, if I let out even a syllable, I was going to lose peace. I was going to scream until my throat bled or break down sobbing, or start viciously listing off the names of every single woman who's ever bought products while his wife was deceased. And I knew with absolute certainty that letting that monster out would not end well for me. It would only give him more ammunition to call me crazy. So I swallowed the fire in my throat. I stood up, picked up my ancient, useless fixtures from the sofa cushion, explicitly left the shattered XR sitting like a paperweight on the coffee table, and turned my back on him. I walked up the stairs to my room. Every single step felt like I was dragging 100 pounds of iron tied to my ankles. I walked inside, shut the door quietly, and locked it with a sharp click, and then my legs gave out. I slid down the back of the door until I hit the floor, and I just lost it. I didn't just cry, I sobbed, I wept until my ribs ached. I cried for the normal happy birthday I didn't get. I cried for the lavish, celebrated hotel parties my brother gets without even asking. I cried because I felt so unbelievably, pathetically stupid for hoping, even for a singular second, that my dad had actually thought about me, that he had actually cared enough to go out of his way to give me something special. Sitting on that floor, I felt so incredibly small, so entirely insignificant. I felt like my entire existence in this family was just a minor, persistent inconvenience that they all merely had to tolerate until I finally moved out. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. My eyes were swollen and puffy, my head was throbbing with a dull ache, and my mouth was dry from crying. I splashed freezing water on my face, took a deep breath, and walked downstairs, mentally steeling myself for a massive argument. I had spent hours in the dark rehearsing what I was going to say. I was ready to defend myself. I was prepared to calmly, rationally explain exactly why his gift felt like a slap in the face. But the argument I had prepared for never came. I walked into the bright kitchen. My dad was standing right there by the stove, making breakfast. I stopped in the doorway and said, "Morning." He didn't flinch, he didn't even blink. He didn't turn his head a single fraction of an inch toward my voice. He calmly reached for a spatula, smoothly flipped a pancake in the pan, and then literally looked directly over my right shoulder and loudly asked my brother, who had just walked in behind me, how he slept. It was chilling. It felt like a bucket of ice water to the chest. It wasn't just him being busy or distracted. It was a highly deliberate, calculated surgical erasure of my presence. He was actively punishing me. In his mind, he had held court and decided that my lack of enthusiastic, performative gratitude the night before was a mortal sin, and his chosen retribution was to pretend I no longer existed in the physical realm. That was day one. I remember standing there, stunned, and then thinking, fine, he's mad, he's throwing a tantrum. He'll get over it by dinner. But dinner came and he ate his food without ever looking in my direction. Silence. The next day dawned and he walked past me in the hallway as if I were thin air. Silence. And you want to know what the absolute worst, most damaging part of this entire ordeal is? It's watching how the rest of the family seamlessly adapts to his behavior. My mom, my brother, my sister, they all see exactly what's happening. They sit at the same table and watch him ask them direct questions while completely ignoring me when I'm sitting inches away, passing the salt, but nobody says a damn thing. Nobody drops their fork and says, "Dad, stop acting like a petulant child and talk to your daughter." They just awkwardly look down at their plates. They chew their food quietly. They actively choose the path of least resistance, and by doing so, they become totally complicit in the silence. Their refusal to intervene makes me feel like I really am losing my mind. It makes me wonder if I really did commit some horrific, unforgivable crime against humanity by putting that broken phone on the table instead of kissing his feet. When everyone you love around you acts like you are the infected problem, it is terrifyingly easy to start believing them. I am trapped in an echo chamber of neglect. I am completely, utterly isolated in a house packed full of people who share my DNA. And here we are, it has been almost a full week of this psychological siege. I am still stubbornly, desperately trying to use the dying iPhone 6s. The battery is completely degraded. It shuts off randomly now, even when the screen claims it's at 60%. I completely missed an urgent text from my lab partner yesterday evening because my phone had silently died in my pocket, and I ended up looking like a slacker and almost got a 0 on a massive group project. My senior year, a year that is already supposed to be incredibly stressful with the weight of college applications, final exams, and trying to figure out my entire future, is being dragged down by this ridiculous, heavy, silent war raging in my own living room. The shattered XR is currently sitting right on the edge of my desk. I absolutely refuse to touch it. It sits there catching the lamplight, feeling like a block of radioactive material. It is a physical, jagged monument to exactly how little my father values my safety and my feelings. Every single time he walks past me in the hallway to get to his office and purposefully looks the other way, it feels like a tiny, stinging paper cut to my soul. Just one more daily reminder of my rank in the house. He genuinely, in the core of his being, believes he did absolutely nothing wrong. He has convinced himself that he is the bruised victim of a spoiled, ungrateful child. He has rewritten the entire narrative in his head so perfectly and completely that he feels perfectly, righteously justified in treating his own daughter like a ghost. So I lay in bed at night, staring at the dark ceiling, and I replay the entire tape in my head. I replay the morning of silence, the lack of happy birthdays. I replay the extravagant hotel parties with the fancy cakes for my brother. I replay the designer bags and the secret credit card charges for his mistresses. And then I turn my head and I look at this broken piece of recycled glass sitting on my desk. I didn't yell at him. I didn't curse or throw things. I was just profoundly, deeply hurt. I just put the box down. I know that I am a teenager, and I know society says teenagers are inherently supposed to be overly dramatic and self-centered. I've factored that in. But I truly do not feel like I'm being dramatic. I just feel heartbroken. I feel utterly, completely dismissed and discarded by the one man in the universe who is biologically supposed to protect me, provide for me, and value me. He firmly believes none of this is his fault. He has ignored my very existence for days, loudly and deliberately showering all of his warmth and attention on my siblings right in front of me, making perfectly sure I see exactly what love I'm missing out on. I am sitting here, practically holding my breath in my own home, afraid to make a sound. I have been gaslit by silence for so long that I'm not even sure if my initial reaction was valid anymore. His silence is so incredibly loud that it is actively drowning out my own common sense and self-worth. So I am asking you, whoever is listening to this, I desperately need someone on the outside, someone not trapped in this house, to tell me the objective truth. Look at the whole ugly picture. Look at the double standards, the lies, the broken glass. Tell me, is it really my fault?